Joining me now is NBC's chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel and John Brennan, who served as CIA director in the Obama administration. So, Richard, what is the latest theory? And we understand that Vladimir Putin has now issued condolences and has actually spoken about condolences to the family and spoken about the death of Prigozhin.
So Putin has been silent until now, but now he has issued this letter of condolences to the family of Prigozhin. Spoke specifically about Prigozhin in the past tense, describing him as, here I have it in front of me. I've known Prigozhin for a long time, since the early 90s. He was a man of a complicated fate, and he made serious mistakes in his life. It goes on. He was a talented man, a talented businessman. He worked not only in our country and with result, but also abroad in Africa in particular. So he's clearly speaking about him as having died, sending out this condolence letter to family members, specifically talking about Prigozhin. So this is the closest we've seen to an official Russian confirmation that he was on this plane thus far. All we've heard before this was the Russian aviation authority saying that he was on a flight manifest and was presumed dead. What's interesting is not only this statement from Putin, the fact that he felt compelled to make it, also that it was not it felt relatively flattering. He compliments Prigozhin's efforts to work with the Russian military in carrying out operations. And Putin talked about how he was tasked with working for the nation and that he had done that for the last several months. No mention, as far in the transcripts that I've seen so far, of the mutiny itself. No mention that Putin considered him a traitor, but instead talking about him being a talented businessman who had this operations abroad and had a complicated past and a complicated fate. So what exactly the mystery now is, how did he die? How did this plane go down? And there are some conflicting reports, nothing confirmed. There are two opposing theories. One, that there was a bomb that was put on the plane while it was on the ground in Moscow. The plane took off and exploded or crashed or suddenly had a catastrophic incident and plummeted to the ground. I think that's the best way to describe it. About 30 minutes after takeoff. The other theory is that it was shot down by a surface-to-air missile. But our own Courtney Kube is hearing from her sources that theory is not getting a lot of traction, because it would have taken a very large surface-to-air missile to reach 28,000 feet where this plane was cruising at the time, and that so far no heat signature, anything like that, has been detected.
And Director Brennan, who would benefit most from Prigozhin's death, other than Vladimir Putin?
Well, I think you put your finger on it. It's Vladimir Putin, because he was going to exact revenge against an individual he considered a traitor. And this very public and violent death, I think, is certainly the handiwork of Vladimir Putin. And so I think he waited those 60 days in order to ensure that he was able to do this and still maintain control over the Wagner Group and the Russian military. So I do think the actions he's taken over the past 2 months in terms of sacking a number of generals and making some changes within the Russian military, I think give him the assurance and the confidence that he had to be able to take care of this. But the fact that he's issued this flattering condolence letter, I think it just shows how Putin is balancing a number of considerations as far as how he handles this. But I think there should be no mistake that Putin's hand certainly is behind this death of Prigozhin.
And I wanted to play what CIA Director Bill Burns had to say in July when we were at the Aspen Security Forum about Putin and Prigozhin.
Putin is someone who generally thinks that revenge is a dish best served cold. So he's going to try to settle the situation to the extent he can. But again, in my experience, Putin is the ultimate apostle of payback. So I would be surprised if Prigozhin escapes further retribution for this. So in that sense, the president's right. If I were Prigozhin, I wouldn't fire my food taster.
Or perhaps take your own private plane from Moscow to St. Petersburg. John Brennan?
Well, that's right. And as Richard pointed out, there was some type of catastrophic event on that plane that caused it to spiral downward like that. And whether or not it was a bomb that was placed on board, I guess it could have been shot by a air-to-air missile. But I think there's still going to be, I think, a fair amount of investigation analysis done on what was the cause of that crash. But it was not certainly a mechanical failure of any sort. It was a catastrophic explosion that took place while it was at that altitude.